First tonight, The Atlantic magazine has published the full text of the group chat in which senior White House officials planned U.S. airstrikes on Yemen. The editor of the magazine was accidentally copied into the messages, prompting widespread criticism of the administration. The messages now released by The Atlantic contain the precise times U.S. warplanes would take off and missiles would be launched, along with details of the military hardware to be used. Afterwards, reports of the effectiveness of the strikes were also shared. President Trump and his team have tried to play down the security breach and have denied claims by The Atlantic that the messages contained classified information. But a subsequent exchange with the magazine, the White House press secretary made clear that the administration objected to the publication of the messages. Democrats are calling for both the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, to resign.
So we've made a lot of progress on two fronts, on both sections that we call them sections, but they're much more than that, Russia, Ukraine, and also the Middle East, and we'll see what happens. We're in deep discussions with Russia and Ukraine.
And look, I take full responsibility. It's embarrassing, right? Yes. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened. But I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened. So you got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So, of course, I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now, whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
This put lives in danger. An investigation needs to take place. That is what we are calling for. And I think the House Armed Services Committee needs to hold hearings on this and get to the bottom of it so no more service members are put in danger. So I am really glad. And yes, to think that anybody is saying now that this was not secure information or this was not secret information or classified information, anybody who knows anything about this area, and there are people on that signal chain that know better, know that this is classified information.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from California in the U.S. by the chief Republican strategist, Errol Morkoc. Errol, great to see you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. A lot of key details are revealed in this latest publication from The Atlantic. I mean, there's pretty much nothing left to the imagination, is there?
I think when we were hoping for transparency, we weren't exactly hoping for this kind of transparency. This was a colossal mistake of a proportion that you can't really draw back other than to at least look at the perhaps silver lining. The only thing that I can put in there is that in the text conversation, they talk about taking the strategic discussion to a higher level of secret chain of command and whatnot. And the discussions they're having are pretty benign. I mean, you're talking about Yemen. You could literally write in the internet, hey, we're attacking Yemen at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Nothing they can do. But that doesn't excuse any of the breakdown and lapse. What is kind of curious is how did he actually get added to that group chat? I mean, he obviously wasn't showing up under his real name. Somebody, maybe a staffer, some sort of issue. So there's going to be some forensic, digital forensics, but there's no spin on this. This was a colossal intelligence failure, even though it wasn't to the extreme end that the Democrats are claiming it was. It's not something that we should be proud of, and it certainly puts a little bit of a sour note on what's been a great first 100 days.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and that actually is quite impressive, you being a chief Republican strategist. And I think you made the good point of saying that it would be important to find out how Mr. Goldberg actually got onto that group chat. But the fact that the administration has denied any classified information was in the messages, I mean, that was what gave him cover to publish it, with Mr. Goldberg saying that it was up to the American public to now decide.
Yeah, I think this is a situation of all is fair in love and war. And for Mr. Goldberg, I think he either lucked or however he got himself into the situation, he got the golden ticket, and the American government effectively said this isn't classified information. When you look at it and read it, it's a very broad spectrum overview. It's not going into details. It's not talking about specific units. It's not talking about coordinates. It's just general geographical claims. So I think perhaps that works to his favor, obviously, to be able to publish it. There was obviously quite a bit of gamesmanship by the journalist in question, as he, hinted all week that he had this smoking gun with, tons of details. And what really came out was a very, I would say, immature group chat. I have to say they did good use of emojis, American flags, and fist bumps and all that. And then the other question that we all have to ask ourselves is, back in the Biden administration, a department inside of Homeland Security switched the communications for the director of Homeland Security and others to Signal. And this is questionable for all Americans for a few reasons. Number one, some of these messages can be set to delete, which is potentially obfuscating the freedom of information that all citizens are able to have. And number two, Signal isn't exactly a secure platform. I work in the defense sector in open source intelligence, and at the very high level, there's backdoors into these sort of applications. So I think that's something that needs to be brought to the table. Why had Homeland Security in the last admin switched over to Signal, and what situation led to this being the way that we're conducting at least let's go, I don't want to say classified, but semi-sensitive information. And I think that's going to really be brought into focus. And I think maybe it can be a good time for some oversight and crackdown on these out-of-party messaging apps, because that's not how we promised to govern, and that's not what President Trump promised the American people. We promised transparency, obviously not this kind of transparency. But we need to definitely get to the bottom of this, especially and figure out if the journalist was able to spoof his way into the call, or if there was perhaps a staffer who added him to the call. I mean, I'm sorry, to the message group. So these are a lot of the questions that are coming out of what I would say, like out of 10, this was a level 3 intelligence failure. It did not compromise any American lives, but if this is the cavalier behavior going forward, it could, and the Democrats are right to push back against us, and I think we should take their criticism seriously, because they have a point.
Well, just coming off the back of what you were saying there, I suppose the key question here is what would have happened if that information had fallen into the wrong hands?
Well, so that's sort of the magic question. Like, you're talking about two technologically incongruent countries. The United States of America, again, could write in the New York Times on Wednesday, we are attacking here, here, and here in Yemen at these exact coordinates with these exact weapons. And there's nothing that anybody could do to stop us unless Russia wanted to start World War III or something. So that's sort of like the saving grace here. You're talking about a situation where if that information had leaked, it probably couldn't have done anything other than to at least create the Yemenis to contact us or ask for maybe some peace. That could have been possible. But in another scenario, in a scenario with a much more formidable foe, or something a little bit less localized, it could have been a disaster. It could have been something that really set back a U.S. military operation. It could set back CENTCOM. And it's not something that we're proud of. Not a great day for the Trump administration.
Well, I mean, according to the documents that were revealed, which you have seen, I mean, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told the group chat the location, the timing, and the target of the upcoming strike against those Houthi areas in Yemen. And by doing this, I mean, Mr. Hegseth was potentially putting Americans in uniform and U.S. fighter pilots at risk, was he not?
Again, it comes down to the technological imbalance. There's nothing in Yemen that could shoot down an American F-22 or F-35. It's conceptually impossible from a force standpoint for them to have been rebuffed. So Defense Secretary Hegseth got lucky. He got lucky that the enemy is a loose term, but the Houthis are technologically incapable of stopping any of our aircraft. Otherwise, if we had a more capable foe or somebody who had actual air defense systems and a relevant air force, yeah, this could have been a disaster. This could have put American pilots in jeopardy. And thankfully, just due to the circumstances, that wasn't possible in this scenario. But it's a valid point to bring up and something that Secretary Hegseth needs to make sure never happens again.
Now, the Democrats say that this happened because many unserious people are in positions for which they're not at all qualified, and they're sort of utterly careless with matters of national security. What's your reaction to that?
I would push back and point out that while this was a lapse in communication, 13 people didn't get killed in a U.S. embassy in Benghazi like they did under Secretary Clinton. So if this is our great intelligence failure, I think we can make up for it. When you look at the people who they had in charge of, for example, the horrific botched evacuation of Afghanistan. I mean, when you look at all of these other events, you put this against them, it doesn't really stack up. But it certainly is a valid point to make, and something that, again, we need to ameliorate. We need to go back. We need to look. We need to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I think that these are the most qualified people possible. The American people are incredibly excited to have a defense secretary who is for the soldiers. If you keep in mind, the last defense secretary, gentleman, I forgot his name, but he was on the board of Raytheon. And so you're having defense secretary who's a arms dealer effectively, and you have more war. Oh, wow, how did that happen? So having somebody like Pete Hegseth in there, yeah, there might be a couple little things, but you're having somebody who the American warfighter trusts and feels like is on their side. And when you have the U.S. Army with all-time low recruiting numbers, especially in the demographic of white men who make up the majority, actually, of the U.S. military in the lowest recruiting percentages, you certainly want to have a military that people want to be proud of and want to join. And that's sort of what Donald Trump is bringing to the table. This setback is something that I think it's important to note that the Trump administration owned it immediately. They came out and owned it. I mean, they have pushed back on the classified details because there is a next level of details and coordinates and stuff that would really be considered classified. This was very broad spectrum. But just in closing, it's a setback. It's a signal to us that the tech mentality of move fast and break things that Elon Musk and Doge is bringing probably doesn't have the same place in the Defense Department, and the Defense Department should not be using Signal for these type of communications. And I think that might be the saving grace or silver lining here. We get a more secure comms for our top people.
And briefly, Eric, as we wrap things up here, do you anticipate there being consequences in terms of the results of the investigation, and at least in terms of the way the White House does things, even perhaps changes in personnel? Or do you expect there'll be little accountability?
I think there's going to be a huge push to find out how Mr. Goldberg got onto that messaging service, and if it comes out that there was a internal saboteur, or if there was some sort of uncouth behavior that occurred, I think that would be where you would see a consequence for however that happened. Now, in regard to the top level people, Stephen Miller, the Pete Hegseths, the Waltz, these guys on this call, no, there's obviously not. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're not going to be fired. Donald Trump can be disappointed in you and still believe that you're up to and capable to the task. And this doesn't define the many decades of service that all of these gentlemen have given to their country across the board. Also, in Pete Hegseth's case, as a platoon leader and a Bronze Star winner, and somebody who was a frontline warfighter, and definitely is somebody who has a vested interest in keeping his men and women alive in the battlefield. So I don't think it's going to be a long-term consequence for them, but if potentially something had been done to bring Mr. Goldberg in there that shouldn't have, that person will be held accountable as they should be.
Errol, thank you very much indeed. Errol Morkoc is the chief Republican strategist. He was talking to me on the line there from California.